Chantel Harrison, 32 years old, standing alone in her newly built dream home, surrounded by untouched appetizers and decorations. The excitement of finally achieving something significant, turning into devastating disappointment, as not a single family member arrives for her housewarming party. Phone notifications showing everyone attending her younger brother Alex's apartment gathering instead. The crushing realization that her family's absence represents something deeper than a scheduling conflict. Before I continue with my story, let me know where you are watching from and hit the subscribe button if you want to hear more stories about family betrayal and finding inner strength. I always believed that family was everything. Growing up as the eldest daughter in the Harrison household, I learned early on that responsibility was my middle name. While my parents doted on my younger brother Alex, I was the one expected to set the example to achieve to be self-sufficient. Despite this uneven dynamic, I harbored a simple dream since childhood to one day own a beautiful home with a garden where our family could gather, laugh, and create memories together. This wasn't just any passing fancy. This dream sustained me through years of working multiple jobs while maintaining straight, as in college. It kept me going when my parents barely acknowledged my academic achievements but threw a huge party when Alex simply passed his classes. The contrast became even more stark when he dropped out in his sophomore year yet continued receiving financial support while I worked myself to exhaustion paying my own way. "Alex is just finding himself," my mother would say, her voice softening in that special way it never did for me. "He's sensitive. Not everyone can be as naturally capable as you are, Chantel." Those words meant as a compliment always landed like a burden. Being capable meant being overlooked. After graduation, I channeled my passion into becoming an architect specializing in sustainable home design. Every blueprint I created for clients contained little pieces of the home I was saving for. Every late night at the office was another dollar toward my dream. 6 years of careful planning, aggressive saving, and countless sacrifices slowly transformed my dream from fantasy to possibility. When I finally found the perfect plot of land with sweeping mountain views, I knew this was it. The location reminded me of where my grandmother once lived, the only place in my childhood where I felt truly seen and valued. Grandma Julia never played favorites. In her garden, both Alex and I were equally cherished. "You have vision, little bird," she'd tell me as we planted tomatoes together. "Someday you'll build something magnificent." The memory of her voice gave me courage as I signed the paperwork for the land, committing to the largest investment of my life. The design process became my sanctuary. Every decision was intentional, from the open concept kitchen, perfect for family gatherings, to the wraparound porch, where conversations could flow into the evening. I incorporated sustainable materials, passive solar design, and energy-efficient systems that reflected my professional expertise. But more importantly, I added touches that made it deeply personal. A reading nook like the one in my childhood home, large windows to capture the mountain view, and a special space for my grandmother's antique dining table where I envisioned future Thanksgiving dinners. I framed family photos for prominent display, including many with Alex, despite our complicated relationship. In my mind, this house would be the place where old wounds could finally heal, where my parents would at last see me as someone worthy of their pride. 3 years before my marriage had ended, when David finally admitted he couldn't understand why I kept trying so hard with my family. "They take you for granted," he'd said during our last argument. "And you let them." At the time, I dismissed his words as those of someone who grew up in a close-knit, supportive family and couldn't understand the complexities of mine. Now, standing alone in my nearly completed home, I wondered if perhaps he had seen something I hadn't been ready to acknowledge. The months leading up to the completion of construction were filled with anticipation. Each day brought new progress, walls going up, windows being installed, flooring laid down. I visited the site daily, sometimes just standing in what would become my living room, imagining the laughter and conversation that would soon fill the space. This house represented not just a personal achievement, but a new chapter for our family. A place where finally I could be the hostess, the provider, the one bringing everyone together. "It's really happening," I whispered to myself one evening, watching the sunset from my future bedroom window, the glass not yet installed. The golden light spilled across the wooden subfloor, and I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. This was something no one could take away from me. This was mine. As the finishing touches were completed, I couldn't wait to share my creation with the people whose approval I had sought my entire life. Surely now, with this tangible accomplishment, they would finally see me. This house would be the bridge that closed the distance between us, the achievement that finally earned me the place in their hearts that Alex had occupied effortlessly since birth. How wrong I was. The moment the final inspection was completed and the keys were officially mine, I began planning the perfect housewarming party. This wouldn't be just any gathering. This would be the event that marked a new beginning for the Harrison family. I created a detailed spreadsheet with everything from menu planning to seating arrangements, determined to think of everything. My first call was to my mother. "Mom, the house is finally ready," I said, unable to contain my excitement. "I'd like to have everyone over for a housewarming in 3 weeks. Saturday the 15th. Will that work for you and Dad?" There was a slight pause before she responded, "Let me check our calendar, honey." I could hear her flipping pages. "Yes, that should be fine. Your father has golf in the morning, but he should be done by afternoon." "Perfect, and could you let Alex know he hasn't been returning my calls lately?" This wasn't unusual. My brother had a habit of going silent when he was struggling with something, and according to my parents, he was between jobs again. "Of course, he's been busy, you know how at Island." The familiar defense of Alex came automatically. "I'm sure he'll be there. He mentioned wanting to see your new place." Encouraged by this positive response, I spent the next week creating handmade invitations. Each one included a personal note expressing what it would mean to have them share in this milestone. For my parents, I wrote about how their example had inspired me to work hard and create something lasting. For Alex, I acknowledged our differences but expressed hope that my home could be a place where we could build a stronger relationship. For aunts, uncles, and cousins, I included memories of family gatherings I hoped to recreate. The RSVPs began trickling in. My Aunt Sarah and Uncle Bill confirmed immediately. Cousins Jessica and Michael said they wouldn't miss it. Even my father's brother Thomas, who rarely attended family functions, sent a message saying he was looking forward to it. Everything was falling into place exactly as I had imagined. Then came the text from Alex 2 weeks before the party. "Hey sis, just a heads up. Having some friends over at my place on the 15th. Nothing big, just casual drinks. You should stop by after your thing." My heart sank as I read his message. After calling my mother to confirm the date worked for everyone after sending out invitations that had already been accepted, Alex had scheduled a competing event on the same day. I tried calling him immediately, but predictably he didn't answer. I typed and retyped my response, trying to find the right balance between assertiveness and understanding. "Alex, that's the day of my housewarming. Everyone's already RSVP'd. Could you possibly move your gathering to Sunday instead? I'd really love for you to be at my event, and it would mean a lot to have the whole family together." His response came hours later. "Can't change now, already told everyone. It's just a few drinks, not a big deal. People can do both." I called my mother again, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. "Mom, did you know Alex is planning something at his apartment the same day as my housewarming?" "Oh, he mentioned having some friends over." Her tone was casual, as if this wasn't a clear conflict. "But don't worry, we'll still come to your party first." First, so you're planning to leave early to go to his place. The hurt must have been evident in my voice. "Chantel, don't make this into a competition. We can stop by both places. Alex's gathering is just a casual get-together with his friends. Your father and I won't stay long at either event." Her attempt at compromise only underscored the inequality. My carefully planned housewarming was being equated with Alex's impromptu drinks with friends. Despite this setback, I threw myself into preparations. I visited 3 different specialty stores to find the exact ingredients for my grandmother's recipes. I spent an entire day making her famous pierogi from scratch, remembering how she had taught me to fold the dough, just so creating perfect little pockets of potato and cheese. The familiar process brought back memories of standing beside her in the kitchen, learning not just recipes but life lessons. "Cooking is love made visible," she would say. "When you feed someone, you're saying they matter to you." I wanted every bite my family took to convey how much they mattered to me, how much I valued their presence in my new home. The day before the party, I cleaned every surface until it gleamed. I arranged fresh flowers in hand-picked vases throughout the house. I set up the outdoor space with string lights and comfortable seating. Everything was perfect, just as I had envisioned it countless times. That evening, I noticed something concerning on social media. Alex had upgraded his casual drinks to a full-blown party, complete with a theme and catering. His post read, "Tomorrow's going to be epic. Apartment party starts at 3 food, drinks, games, and surprises. Don't miss it, 3 o'clock. The exact time my invitation had specified for my housewarming. I called my mother again, panic rising in my throat. "Mom, have you seen Alex's post? He's turned his get-together into a party that starts at the exact same time as mine." Her sigh was audible. "Chantel, I'm sure it's just a coincidence. Why don't you call him and work it out?" "I've tried calling him 3 times today. He's not picking up." "Well, you know how he island. Don't take it personally, honey. We'll still come to your house first." First. Again with the first, as if my event was just a obligatory stop before the real celebration. I went to bed that night with knots in my stomach, trying to convince myself that everything would be fine. People had RSVP'd. They would come. This was important. The morning of the party arrived with perfect weather, as if the universe was offering at least one kindness. Sunlight streamed through the windows of my new home, illuminating all the love and care I had put into creating this space. I pushed aside my anxiety and focused on final preparations, setting out appetizers, chilling drinks, and queuing up a carefully selected playlist. At 2:30, everything was ready. I took a moment to stand in the center of my living room, taking it all in. The house looked like something from a magazine. More importantly, it looked like home, my home. I felt a surge of pride that momentarily eclipsed my worry about Alex's competing event. By 3:15, that pride had begun to waver. No one had arrived yet. I sent a gentle group text, "Everything's ready at the new house. Looking forward to seeing everyone soon." 3:30 came and went, then 4 o'clock. I received a text from Aunt Sarah. "So sorry, dear. Running late. Might stop by later." Then Uncle Bill got caught up with something. "We'll try to make it." My cousin Jessica, "Change of plans. At Alex's now. We'll try to swing by after." With each message, my heart sank lower. I scrolled through social media and saw what I had been dreading: photos of my family arriving at Alex's apartment, drinks in hand, smiles on their faces. They hadn't been running late. They had chosen his event over mine. By 5 o'clock, my beautiful spread of food remained untouched. The carefully selected wines stayed corked. The playlist had cycled through twice. And I stood alone in my dream home, facing a truth I had been avoiding for years. In the hierarchy of the Harrison family, I would always come second. As the clock struck 6, the reality of my situation became impossible to ignore. The beautiful charcuterie board I had spent hours arranging was wilting under the ambient warmth. The homemade pierogi, my grandmother's recipe that I had perfected over years, sat cold and untouched. Ice melted in drink buckets, diluting the carefully selected beverages that no one would taste. My dream home, designed with such love and attention to detail, felt cavernous in its emptiness. The open concept layout that I had envisioned, filled with conversation and laughter, now only amplified the silence. Every few minutes I checked my phone, sending increasingly desperate messages. "Is anyone still planning to come? The food is ready whenever you arrive. Did something happen? Is everyone okay?" The responses when they came were variations on the same theme: vague excuses, promises to try to stop by later, and uncomfortable apologies. But what hurt more than the messages were the social media updates continuing to appear on my feed. My brother Alex, the eternal favorite, was posting photos of what appeared to be the event of the season. There was my father, beer in hand, laughing with Alex's friends. There was my mother helping to serve food in Alex's cramped kitchen. There were my aunts, uncles, and cousins, all squeezed into his small apartment, looking happier than I had seen them in years. The hashtag below the photos read #spontaneous family reunion, as if this gathering had been an organic, joyful coincidence rather than a deliberate competing event. With shaking hands, I scrolled through more photos. One showed Alex making an announcement, everyone's attention focused on him. The caption read, "Big news from the little bro, congrats on the new job," so that was it. Alex had gotten a job, and that was deemed more celebration-worthy than the home I had spent years working toward. The unfairness of it hit me like a physical blow. Throughout our lives, Alex had received praise and celebration for the smallest accomplishments, while my achievements were treated as expected unremarkable. When I graduated college with honors while working 2 jobs, my parents gave me a card. When Alex simply passed his classes, they threw a party. When I got my first architecture job, they said, "Well, of course they hired you." When Alex landed an entry-level position after months of unemployment, it was treated as a momentous occasion. And now here was the evidence documented for all to see. Alex's last-minute announcement about a new job had trumped my years of hard work, saving, and planning. My housewarming, an event meant to celebrate the culmination of my life's dream, had been deemed less important than yet another celebration of Alex's latest step toward basic adult responsibility. The pain was visceral, radiating from my chest outward. My vision blurred with tears as I sat alone at my dining table, the beautiful farmhouse table that had once belonged to my grandmother. I could almost hear her voice, "Little bird, know your worth. Not everyone will see it, but that doesn't make it any less real." As the 3rd hour of my non-existent party ticked by, I found myself wandering through the empty rooms of my home. This house that I had poured my heart into now felt like a monument to my naivety. Each carefully chosen detail, each thoughtful design element seemed to mock my belief that this achievement would finally change how my family saw me. In the kitchen, I stared at the special shelf I had built specifically to display my mother's collection of hand-painted teacups, which she had promised to bring today. In the guest bedroom, the quilt rack waited empty for the family heirloom my father had said he would deliver. Every corner of this house contained some accommodation for my family. Some space carved out specifically to make them feel welcome and important. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across my empty living room. I stepped outside onto the wraparound porch, hugging myself against the evening chill. From here, I could see the mountains that had reminded me of my grandmother's home, the view that had given me such hope when I first discovered this property. "Beautiful evening, isn't it?" The voice startled me. My neighbor Margaret, a retired teacher I had met briefly during construction, stood at the edge of my yard. I saw all the cars leaving earlier. Did I miss the party? I couldn't bring myself to admit the humiliating truth. Just a small gathering. Ended a bit early. She seemed to read between the lines, her kind eyes taking in my disheveled appearance and tear-stained face. "Well, I brought this as a housewarming gift. Nothing fancy, just some homemade bread and honey from my bees." She handed me a small basket. "Thank you," I managed, touched by this simple kindness from someone who barely knew me. "Would you like to come in?" "Oh, I wouldn't want to intrude." She glanced at her watch. "But perhaps another time. I'd love to see what you've done with the place. The construction looked fascinating." I'd like that I said, meaning it. At least someone showed genuine interest in my home. After she left, I returned inside, placing her gift on the counter next to all the untouched food I had prepared. The contrast wasn't lost on me, a thoughtful gesture from a virtual stranger versus the complete absence of my own family. As night fell completely, I sat in darkness in my living room, the furniture mere silhouettes in the moonlight streaming through the windows. I hadn't bothered to turn on the lights. What was the point? There was no one here to see the beautiful fixtures I had selected, the warm ambient lighting I had designed to make everyone feel comfortable and welcome. In this dark moment, my phone lit up with a message. For a brief, hopeful second, I thought perhaps someone was finally coming. Instead, it was my mother. "We need to talk. Now." The tone of the message, demanding rather than apologetic, sent a chill through me. Even now, after what they had done, she was approaching me as if I were the one who had transgressed. The audacity of it ignited something in me, a spark of anger cutting through the fog of hurt and disappointment. I called her, immediately prepared for apologies, excuses, perhaps even genuine remorse. What I got instead would change everything. "Chantel, I think you need to apologize to your brother." My mother's voice came through the phone with crystal clarity, each word a fresh wound. Apologize? For what exactly? I struggled to keep my voice steady, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. For trying to overshadow his good news with your House thing. She said house thing as if my life's achievement was a frivolous vanity project. You know how hard he's worked to get this job. He's been through so much. The injustice of her words left me momentarily speechless. When I finally found my voice, it emerged as barely more than a whisper. Mom, I planned this housewarming weeks ago. I checked with you about the date. Alex deliberately scheduled his announcement to conflict with my event. Well, he didn't know it was so important to you. And honestly, Chantel, this whole house, it feels like you're just trying to show off how successful you are. It makes Alex feel bad about himself. Her words hit me like a slap. Show off, I've been talking about this dream for years. I invited everyone because I wanted to share it with you, not to make anyone feel bad. Well, that's how it comes across. Her tone hardened. Always achieving, always exceeding expectations. Do you ever think about how that affects your brother? Not everyone can be as driven as you are. The conversation continued in this vein, each exchange revealing more painful truths. My mother admitted that the family had felt more comfortable at Alex's cramped apartment than they would have in my fancy new house. My father apparently had commented that he wouldn't be able to relax on my expensive furniture. Relatives had worried about their children touching things in my museum of a home. But you haven't even seen it, I protested, tears streaming down my face. How could you judge it before you've even been here? We've seen the pictures you sent, my mother replied dismissively. It's beautiful, Chantel, really, but it's just so, perfect, intimidating. Alex's place feels more like home. Home. The word echoed painfully. All I had wanted was to create a home where my family would feel welcome, where we could build new memories together. Instead, they had judged it sight unseen, projecting their own insecurities onto my achievement, and using those projections to justify their absence. As the call continued, years of family history unraveled before me. My mother revealed that they had always felt I was different from the rest of the family, too ambitious, too perfectionistic. While they had pushed me to achieve, they had simultaneously resented the achievements that resulted from that pressure. They had consistently enabled Alex's underachievement while taking my success for granted. And worst of all, they saw absolutely nothing wrong with this dynamic. We love you both equally, my mother insisted, even as her words proved the opposite. We just show it differently. Alex needs more support. You've always been so independent. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness, questioning everything. Had I built this house for myself, or had it been yet another attempt to earn the approval that would never come? Had I designed each room with my own preferences in mind, or had I unconsciously tried to create spaces that would finally make my family proud of me? The kitchen with extra counter space for my mother to bake, the den with comfortable seating arranged perfectly for my father to watch sports, the guest room, specifically designed with Alex in mind. For a moment, I contemplated selling the house. What was the point of this big, beautiful space if it only served to widen the gap between my family and me? Perhaps I should find something smaller, less intimidating. Something that wouldn't threaten Alex's fragile ego or make my parents uncomfortable. As midnight approached, I found myself standing in front of the large picture window in my living room, staring at my reflection superimposed over the darkness outside. Behind me, I could see the shadowy outlines of my empty home. Empty of people, yes, but full of my dreams, my hard work, my vision. And suddenly, with startling clarity, I remembered why I had wanted this house in the first place. Not for them, for me. The little girl who had sketched house plans in school notebooks. The teenager who had fallen in love with architecture. The woman who had worked tirelessly to build a career designing spaces that would bring joy and comfort to others. This house was mine, my achievement, my sanctuary. And I had been ready to let my family's dysfunction taint it before I had even spent a single night here. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The pain was still there, raw and throbbing, but alongside it grew a new resolve. I had spent my entire life seeking validation from people who were fundamentally incapable of giving it. I had contorted myself into shapes that might finally earn their approval, only to watch them lavish that approval on Alex for doing the bare minimum. Enough was enough. I pulled out my phone and began drafting a message, then deleted it. This wasn't something to be handled over text. If there was to be a reckoning, it would happen face to face in the home they had deemed too perfect to even visit. With newfound clarity, I turned on all the lights in the house, illuminating every carefully designed corner. I walked through each room, really seeing it for the first time, not through the imagined eyes of my family, but through my own. This wasn't a showpiece designed to impress others. This was my home. And it was beautiful. I slept that night on the couch in the living room, unwilling to retreat to the bedroom while there was still so much unresolved. But despite the emotional turmoil, I slept more soundly than I had in weeks. Something had been decided deep in my subconscious. The pattern that had defined my entire life was about to be broken. I woke with the sunrise feeling strangely peaceful despite the events of the previous day. The morning light streamed through the windows, illuminating my home with golden warmth. In that gentle glow, I made a decision that would change everything. Sitting at my kitchen island with a cup of coffee, I composed a carefully worded message to my family. No accusations, no emotional outbursts, just clear, irrefutable facts about their behavior and its impact on me. I detailed the effort I had put into planning the housewarming, the consideration I had shown in checking the date with them first, and the hurt I had felt when they chose to attend Alex's last-minute gathering instead. I understand now that there are deeper issues at play, I wrote. For years, I've accepted being taken for granted while Alex receives constant support and praise. Yesterday made it clear that this dynamic isn't going to change unless I change my response to it. I deserve better than what happened yesterday, and I'm no longer willing to pretend otherwise. I concluded with an invitation that was also a challenge. I'm inviting you all to come see my home this Sunday at 2 o'clock. Not for a party, but for an honest conversation about where we go from here. This is your opportunity to see what you missed, and for us to address some hard truths as a family. After sending the message, I turned off my phone and began the process of reclaiming my space. The photos of family that I had so carefully arranged throughout the house came down one by one. Not all of them. I wasn't erasing my history, but I removed the ones I had displayed out of obligation, rather than genuine desire, the formal family portraits that had always felt slightly stiff and artificial. In their place, I put up photographs that brought me joy trips with friends, professional achievements, moments of personal significance. I rearranged furniture that I had positioned with my parents' preferences in mind, configuring the spaces to better suit my own needs and tastes. In the guest bedroom, intended primarily for Alex, I removed the specific touches I had added. Thinking of him, the gaming console, the particular brand of toiletries, he preferred the books by his favorite authors. The room would remain a guest room, but it would no longer be a shrine to my brother's preferences. As I worked, I realized how much of my home I had designed with my family's approval in mind, rather than my own happiness. The kitchen hadn't needed quite so much counter space. I rarely baked the elaborate desserts my mother was known for. The den didn't require the oversized recliner my father would have preferred. I enjoyed curling up with a book in a more elegant armchair. By midday, I felt physically and emotionally exhausted, but strangely liberated. I turned my phone back on to find multiple messages from my family, ranging from defensive, "You're overreacting as usual," to manipulative, "Your brother is really hurt by your message," to dismissive, "It was just a party, why are you making such a big deal?" None of them notably declined my invitation for Sunday. In the midst of these messages was a text from Margaret, my neighbor. "Hope you're settling in well. I've got extra tomato seedlings if you're planning a garden." The simple kindness of it, with no agenda or emotional manipulation, brought tears to my eyes. I responded thanking her for the offer and suggesting we might talk about garden plans sometime soon. Then on impulse, I reached out to friends I had somewhat neglected, while focusing on my home and family, old college roommates, work colleagues, members of my book club. I shared honest updates about my life, including the difficult family situation, and was met with an outpouring of support. "We've been worried about you," my friend Teresa wrote. "You always give so much to your family and get so little in return. Maybe this is the wake-up call they needed." "Your new house looks amazing in the photos," messaged David, a colleague who had become a close friend. "They're lost for not seeing it in person. When can those of us who actually appreciate you come for a tour?" As Saturday turned to Sunday, I prepared for my family's arrival with a calm determination that surprised me. I cleaned the house, but not obsessively as I had before the housewarming. I prepared simple refreshments, not the elaborate spread I had previously created. This wasn't about impressing them anymore. It was about standing my ground in a space that was truly mine. Sunday afternoon arrived, and with it came my family arriving together as if for solidarity. My mother entered first, her eyes darting around, taking in the details of my home with a critical gaze. My father followed, uncomfortable in his Sunday best, as if he were visiting a formal venue rather than his daughter's home. Alex came last, hands shoved in pockets, expression a mixture of defensiveness and curiosity. "It's very modern," my mother commented, running a finger along the quartz countertop in the kitchen. The slight distaste in her voice was unmistakable. "The ceilings are higher than I expected," my father added, looking upward with a frown. "Must cost a fortune to heat." Alex said nothing, but his eyes narrowed as he took in the home office, with its awards and professional certifications displayed on the wall. I could read the jealousy in his expression, the same look he had given me when I received academic honors in high school, while he struggled to maintain passing grades. I gave them a brief tour, watching as they found small things to criticize. The stairs were too steep. The windows would be difficult to clean. The backyard would require too much maintenance. Each comment revealed more about their own insecurities than any flaw in my home's design. Finally, we gathered in the living room, the tension palpable as they perched uncomfortably on my furniture, waiting for me to break the silence. It was time for the conversation I had been rehearsing in my mind for 2 days. The conversation that would either begin to heal our family or confirm that some distances cannot be bridged. "Thank you for coming." I began, my voice steadier than I had expected. "I wanted you to see the home you chose not to visit on Friday. But more importantly, I wanted to have an honest conversation about why that happened and what it means for our relationship going forward." My mother immediately jumped in defensive, as I had anticipated. "Chantel, we've already explained. Alex's announcement was important, and we couldn't be in 2 places at once. I don't understand why you're making such a big deal out of one missed party." I took a deep breath, maintaining my composure. "It wasn't just a party, Mom. It was a milestone I've been working toward for years. One I specifically checked with you about before scheduling. And Alex deliberately planned his gathering to conflict with mine." "That's not true," Alex protested, leaning forward with flushed cheeks. "I didn't know your thing was so important. It's just a house." "Just a house," I repeated, gesturing around us. "This represents 6 years of saving, planning, and working overtime. I've talked about this dream since I was a child. And you knew exactly what you were doing when you scheduled your party at the exact same time as mine after I had already confirmed the date with everyone." My father shifted uncomfortably. "Now, Chantel, there's no need to attack your brother. He's been going through a rough patch, and this job is a big step for him." "I'm happy for Alex and his new job," I said sincerely. "But that doesn't excuse what happened. And frankly, it's part of a pattern that's gone on our entire lives." My mother's expression hardened. "What pattern?" "We've always supported both of you." "Have you?" I asked quietly. "Let me give you some examples." And so I did. Calmly and without accusation, I laid out specific instances throughout our lives. Alex receiving lavish praise for minimal effort, while my achievements were treated as expected. The financial support he continued to receive well into adulthood, while I was expected to be entirely self-sufficient. The way family gatherings revolved around his schedule and preferences, while mine were secondary considerations. When I graduated with honors while working 2 jobs, I got a card. When Alex simply passed his classes, you threw a party. When I landed my first architecture position, you said, "Of course they hired you." When Alex got an entry-level job after months of unemployment, it was treated as a momentous occasion worthy of celebration. My mother's face had grown increasingly flushed during my recitation. "That's completely different. Alex struggles more than you do. He needs more encouragement." "And I don't?" I asked, feeling a surprising calm despite the confrontation. "Do you think your capable daughter doesn't also need recognition and support? Do you think it didn't hurt when not a single family member showed up to celebrate the biggest achievement of my life?" Alex scoffed, gesturing around at my home. "Oh, please, you're doing fine. Look at this place. Some of us don't have everything come easily to us. Like you do." "Easily. The word hung in the air between us. Alex, nothing about this was easy. I worked 60-hour weeks for years. I sacrificed vacations, relationships, even started a family to make this happen. The difference is that I kept going even without the constant validation and support that you receive as a matter of course. My father, who had been largely silent, finally spoke. Chantel, what exactly do you want from us? An apology. Fine, we're sorry we missed your party, but this attitude isn't like you. You've always been the reasonable one. That's exactly the problem, Dad, I replied. I've always been the reasonable one, because I've suppressed my own needs and feelings to maintain family harmony. I've accepted being taken for granted because confronting it might rock the boat, but I can't do that anymore. I stood up and walked to the window, gathering my thoughts before turning back to face them. I'm not selling this house despite what you might have hoped. This is my home and I'm proud of it. What I am doing is redefining our relationship on my terms. The shock on their faces was almost comical. They had clearly expected this conversation to end as all our conflicts had in the past with me, eventually backing down, accommodating their feelings at the expense of my own. What does that mean? My mother asked warily. It means I'm no longer going to contort myself to fit your expectations or diminish my achievements to make Alex feel better. It means I expect the same level of support and recognition that he receives automatically. And it means there are consequences when you hurt me like you did on Friday. Alex stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. You're acting like a victim when you have all this. He gestured wildly around the room. Some of us are still struggling to figure things out, you know. I know, Alex. And I've always supported you through those struggles. I've celebrated your victories no matter how small. I've never deliberately sabotaged your achievements. Can you say the same? His silence was answer enough. My mother began to cry, her go-to response when confronted with uncomfortable truths. I don't understand why you're being so cruel. We've always loved you. I know you love me, Mom, I said gently, but you haven't respected me. You haven't seen me. You've taken advantage of my independence rather than nurturing it. And that needs to change if we're going to have a healthy relationship moving forward. My father, ever the pragmatist, seemed to be the first to recognize that this was not a temporary outburst, but a fundamental shift. What exactly are you proposing, Chantel? I'm proposing boundaries, I replied. I'll no longer drop everything when Alex has a crisis. I won't accept last-minute cancellations or having my achievements minimized. I'm not cutting you off, but I am requiring basic respect and consideration. The conversation continued for hours, cycling through denial, anger, bargaining, and finally the first glimmers of acceptance. My mother vacillated between tears and defensive anger. My father retreated into stoic silence, punctuated by practical questions. Alex stormed out at one point only to return 30 minutes later, slightly more subdued. By the time they left, nothing had been fully resolved, but something had fundamentally changed. For the first time in my life, I had stated my truth without apology and stood firm in the face of their resistance. The ground beneath our family dynamic had shifted, and though the aftershocks would continue for months, there was no going back to the way things had been. I stood in my doorway watching them drive away, their faces still bearing the stunned expressions of people who had expected one reality and encountered another entirely. As their car disappeared around the corner, I felt a profound sense of release. Whatever happened next, I had reclaimed not just my home but myself. 6 months passed each day, bringing small steps toward a new normal. The first few weeks after our confrontation were difficult, with strained phone calls and text messages loaded with subtext. My mother cycled between guilt-inducing sadness and attempts to reestablish the old patterns. My father remained distant, but occasionally reached out with awkward attempts at connection. Alex, surprisingly, was the first to show real change. 3 weeks after our confrontation, he called me on a Sunday afternoon. Can I come see the house again? Just me this time? I want to. I don't know, start over maybe. His visit was tentative, awkward, but marked by moments of genuine curiosity about my work and life. He admired features of the house he had previously ignored, asked questions about my design process, and even acknowledged the effort it had taken to create this home. I never really understood what you do, he admitted, as we sat on the back porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and purple. Architecture always seemed like this abstract thing. But seeing this place, how everything works together, how it feels to be in the spaces you created, it's pretty amazing, Chantel. That conversation marked the beginning of a slow transformation in our relationship. For perhaps the first time, Alex was seeing me as a separate person with my own struggles and achievements, not just as the infuriatingly perfect older sister against whom he measured his own perceived inadequacies. My parents took longer to adjust to the new boundaries I had established. There were missteps and backsliding passive-aggressive comments and attempts to make me feel guilty for changing the family dynamic. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift. My mother called one evening in early autumn, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "I've been thinking about what you said about us treating you and Alex differently. I didn't want to believe it, but I've been paying attention and you might have a point." It wasn't a full acknowledgement, but it was a start. Small changes followed my achievements mentioned in conversation with the same enthusiasm as Alex's invitations extended with genuine consideration for my schedule. Questions about my work that showed real interest rather than perfunctory politeness. My father, never one for emotional discussions, showed his evolving understanding in more practical ways. He began calling for advice on home maintenance issues, a tacit acknowledgement of my expertise. He forwarded articles about architecture that reminded him of my work. Once he even defended my career choices when a family friend made a dismissive comment about artistic professions. Meanwhile, I was making my own transformations. With the energy no longer consumed by seeking family approval, I found myself flourishing in unexpected ways. My professional work reached new creative heights, resulting in a significant commission to design an eco-friendly community center. I reconnected with friends who had drifted to the periphery of my life during the all-consuming house project. Most significantly, I began to truly inhabit my home, adapting spaces to reflect my authentic preferences rather than what I thought would please others. I converted the formal dining room into a combination library and design studio. I replaced the guest bedroom intended primarily for Alex with a multi-purpose space for yoga and meditation. The backyard, once designed with family gatherings in mind, became a peaceful retreat with a vegetable garden inspired by Margaret's tomato seedlings. Margaret herself became an unexpected but welcome presence in my life. Our occasional conversations over the fence evolved into regular Sunday coffees on my porch, where her wisdom and straightforward perspective helped me navigate the changing family dynamics. "Families are like gardens," she told me one morning as we watched butterflies dance among her gifted tomato plants now thriving in my yard. "Some plants need more water, some need more sun, but nothing grows properly when you keep it in the wrong conditions just to please the gardener." 4 months after the confrontation, I hosted my first dinner party in my reclaimed home. Not a family obligation, but a gathering of people who genuinely valued my company, colleagues who appreciated my professional contributions, friends who had stood by me through difficult times, new acquaintances like Margaret who knew me as I was now rather than who I had been. The evening was filled with laughter, meaningful conversation, and genuine warmth. As I looked around my dining table at these faces, I realized I had created something far more valuable than a perfect physical space. I had created a home in the truest sense, a place where I could be authentically myself, surrounded by people who saw and appreciated me. 2 weeks later, I took a deep breath and extended an invitation to my family for Thanksgiving dinner. It would be the first major family gathering in my home since the confrontation, and I approached it with cautious optimism rather than the desperate need for approval that would have characterized such an event in the past. To my surprise, they accepted. Even more surprisingly, they arrived on time, bearing appropriate gifts and making genuine efforts to admire the home they had previously judged sight unseen. The dinner wasn't perfect. Old patterns occasionally surfaced in my mother's reflexive praise of Alex's minor contributions to the meal, or my father's awkward attempts at conversation. But there were also moments of real connection, my mother and I cooking side by side in my kitchen, finding a rhythm that had eluded us for years. My father genuinely complimenting specific design elements, Alex helping with cleanup without being asked. As we sat around the table I had once envisioned as the center of family gatherings, I realized that while the reality didn't match my childhood fantasy, it offered something perhaps more valuable: the beginning of an authentic relationship based on mutual respect, rather than familiar patterns of enabling and resentment. "This is nice," my mother said as the evening drew to a close, gesturing around at the home she had once deemed too perfect, too intimidating. "It feels like you, Chantel. Not just the house, but the way you've brought us together here. Thank you for giving us another chance." In that moment, I understood that the true value of my dream home had nothing to do with impressing others or earning approval. Its worth lay in the painful but necessary growth it had catalyzed, the authentic self it had helped me reclaim, and the genuine connections it now fostered. The journey from seeking external validation to finding internal peace had been difficult and at times painful. But standing in my doorway waving goodbye to my family as they left that evening, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the crisis that had forced me to confront our dysfunctional patterns. In losing what I thought I wanted, I had gained what I truly needed. Not perfect family harmony, but self-respect, clear boundaries, and relationships based on authenticity rather than obligation. My home was no longer a showpiece designed to finally earn my family's approval. It was simply mine, a reflection of my values, my aesthetics, my life, and in that authenticity it had become something far more beautiful than the perfect facade I had initially envisioned. Have you ever had to stand up to your family to protect your own well-being? What helped you find the courage to set boundaries with loved ones? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength through difficult family dynamics. And share this with someone who might need to be reminded that sometimes the most loving thing we can do for ourselves and our families is to break unhealthy patterns. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, the most important home you'll ever build is the one within yourself.